Ms. Osborne, we were discussing, I think I had handed you a couple of photos, and you had an opportunity to look at these. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Your turn. This is fine. Okay. All right. So you have had you had a chance to look at the medical records and note these numbers here. These are specimen ID numbers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what I want to ask you about these labels, they have colors on them, right? We see red. Whoops. Wait a minute. It's got to adjust. Okay. We see red. Is that right?
Yes, it correlates to the color on the top of the tube, the cap
Color
on the tube.
Color on the top of the tube. Okay. So red. This is light green. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is that the mint green that you mentioned earlier?
Yes.
That was some kind of a test?
Various tests are taken from, can be tested on a mint green tube.
Okay, there can be different tests in different mint green tubes. Does the color of the tube top correspond to a kind of additive in the tube?
It can?
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't always?
Oh, I mean, yes, it does. The color, a mint green tube always has the same additive in it.
What's the additive in a mint green tube?
I can't tell you.
Okay, but there's an additive in a mint green tube?
Yes.
Do you know if there's an additive in a red tube?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And then I think we have here, this is a different view of that. Here's red and light green, right?
Yes.
And then skip ahead. Right here at the end, we have two more colors, right?
Light blue.
And
It's not a color that says ED adult.
what about down at the bottom there? Can you read that?
Looks like it says lavender. It's a little cut off.
Is that a common tube top color?
Yes.
Okay. And this is number 11. I'll mess that back. Yeah, it is either dark. Oh, that's number 11.
It is.
Now, as part of your responsibilities as the primary trauma nurse, would you do an initial assessment of somebody coming into the trauma unit?
Yes.
Do you have any recollection of doing an assessment on Miss Kroese when she came in?
Do I personally remember this? No. Based on my practice, I would have done it.
Okay. I'm going to pass you up a couple pages of the medical records here. There are 3 pages.
Are these already in
They're
evidence?
already in evidence.
Okay.
I'm just gonna ask her.
Okay.
That's just cautious.
Okay.
If these can be passed to the witness.
Are you introducing those separately?
No, I'm just gonna ask her questions. If you could just take a look at those. Do you remember during your evaluation if Ms. Kroese indicated that she remembered some of the events of the night?
Based on my triage note here. It states that the patient stated that she did not recall the accident, but recalled everything leading up to it.
Okay. And I think the next page, there is a page labeled physical exam, or a series of notes labeled physical exam.
Mm-hmm.
During that physical exam,
Now that is the provider's note, not the nursing note.
okay, but you've had a chance to review those.
I mean, yes, I'm just saying this is not my note that you're referencing. This is the physician's note.
You didn't actually take that exam.
This physical exam is the physician's note.
Okay. But in that exam, it actually indicates that her pupils were equally round and reactive to light. Is that correct?
That's what it states.
Okay. It indicates that she answers questions intermittently but with tears. Is that correct?
That is what it states, yes.
Indicates she has an appropriate mood and affect. Is that correct?
That is what is stated here.
What is there? I think there's another indication in here. You may have made this notation. There may have been somebody else made this notation. When it says AOX3, what does that mean?
Alert and oriented times 3.
And what does that mean?
Times 3 is person, place, and time.
Okay. And are those indications in the records?
Are we looking for this on a specific page that you're referencing?
It would either be on that page you're looking at or on the page before. In your initial intake.
Not seeing it, but it looks like this intake note it would have started on a previous page. Found it on that page.
Alert and oriented times 3?
Yes.
Okay. Is that your note or somebody else's?
So this page is my note.
Okay. So your actual personal assessment of her was alert and oriented times 3?
Yes.
Okay. Now, and I know you haven't done a full 100% detailed review today, but you've previously reviewed the medical records in this case, right?
Yes.
Okay. And based on your recollection, there was no order for blood alcohol tests done in the ER. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a special tube that you use when you order blood alcohol tests in the ER?
Typically it's in a dark green.
Dark green or dark gray?
Dark green.
Dark green tube. And none of the tubes we looked at were dark green?
No, they were not.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Ms. Osborne, in what circumstances would Vanderbilt University Medical Center in a trauma setting, such as Ms. Kroese's case, order a blood alcohol test?
If it was relevant to their medical treatment.
Was it relevant to Ms. Kroese's medical treatment?
No.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Any further cross-examination?
Can we have just a second, Your Honor?
What do you mean by it's not relevant to her medical treatment?
Whether or not she had alcohol in her system would not have changed what we did medically for her.
Okay. Thank you.
You made further mistake?
No, Your Honor.
Can we release the witness?
Yes.
Ms. Brand, release the witness.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. You are free to leave. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the state calls Dr. Feng Li.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you please state your name?
Feng Li, Fengli.
How are you employed, sir?
I am the Chief Medical Examiner for Metropolitan Nashville and Davidson County.
You're based in Davidson County. Does your office serve a variety of counties,
Yes, more than 50 counties in the state of Tennessee.
including Williamson County?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you some questions about your background and qualifications, sir.
Sure.
Can you detail your educational background for us?
So I had several degrees. I had my medical degree from China and my graduate degree in PhD from University of Louisville in Louisville, Kentucky. And also I have a law degree from National School of Law.
Can you detail your prior work experience?
Yes. I came to the United States in 1988 to pursue my education. And then I had my residency training in Philadelphia in combined anatomic and clinical pathology. And then fellowship training also in Philadelphia in forensic pathology. So I moved to Nashville in July 2000.
What is your specific area of expertise in the medical field?
I'm board certified by American Board of Pathology in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology.
Can you tell us the difference between those three things?
Yes, this is under the broader category of pathology. So pathology is a subspecialty in medicine dealing with two broad categories. One is called anatomic and one is called clinical. So in an anatomic sense, you probably know that the surgeons removed some tumor. So the pathologist has to figure out whether the tumor is benign or malignant. And clinical pathology is another broad category, basically dealing with clinical side, including chemistry, microbiology, blood bank, and stuff. And forensic pathology, on the other hand, is a subspecialty under anatomic pathology, dealing with medical legal death investigation to determine the cause of death, manner of death on these cases.
Is that the field typically associated with conducting an autopsy and ruling on a cause of death?
Yes, autopsy is the one part of the investigation to determine the cause of death and manner of death.
Have you ever been presented with any awards or honors in your field?
Yes, several like scholarship and traveling stipend, etc.
Have you ever published any research papers in your field?
Yes,
How many?
I don't have a clear count, more than 10 or 20.
Have you ever engaged in any specific research activities in your field?
Yes.
How many?
Again, resulting in graduate school, postdoctoral research, and I have several degrees in my career.
Do you maintain a CV that documents your relative experience and educational background?
Yes.
I'm going to pass you a document at this time. Okay. Can you please tell me if you can identify this, Dr. Lee? Is that your CV?
Yes, this is a copy of my CV.
And does that accurately reflect your educational and experience in your field?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state would ask to move that into evidence.
Exhibit,
As
is
exhibit.
marked as exhibit 12?
Yes, sir. Thank you. How long have you been licensed to practice medicine in the United States?
Since 1995.
And are you presently engaged in the practice of medicine as the chief medical examiner of the Davidson County Medical Office?
Yes.
What are your typical duties there?
So We have a busy office, regional forensic center in Nashville. We cover, as I said, more than 50 counties in the state of Tennessee. And I am overseeing the operation of the entire office, as well as doing autopsy myself.
How many autopsies have you performed over the course of your career?
I have more than 20 years experience, and I don't have a clear exact numbers, but I'd say more than 5,000 autopsies in my career.
When you conduct an autopsy, are you often tasked with offering an opinion as to the cause of death of the decedent?
Yes, that's part of my job.
In a broad sense, doctor, how do you go about arriving at a conclusion of cause of death?
So autopsy, as I just said, is one part of the investigation. We are physician first. So just like any other physicians, you have to get a patient's history, complaint, what is wrong. And the same thing we have here. We have to have some history, scene investigation, witness report, and then we do autopsy, and then we'll order lab studies if necessary, usually including toxicology, and eventually to reach a conclusion as to the cause of death and manner of death.
Have you ever testified in a circuit court in Tennessee concerning your conclusions as to a cause of death on an autopsy you've performed?
Yes, many counties, including this one.
And have you ever been qualified as an expert in the field of forensic pathology?
Yes.
How many times?
Yeah. Again, I don't have the number, but many times.
Your Honor, the state offers Dr. Lee as an expert in the field of forensic pathology.
You could, board hire the witness.
No objection.
Very well, he'll be qualified at that time.
Thank you. Doctor, did you perform an autopsy on a 30-year-old man named Destin Legieza?
Yes, I did.
Did you reach a conclusion as to Mr. Legieza's cause of death?
Cause of death is multiple blunt force injuries.
Multiple blunt force injuries?
Yes.
What information did you rely upon in reaching that conclusion?
Again, the scene investigation, reports, witness, and autopsy findings, and also lab studies, including toxicology studies.
What date and time did Mr. Legieza die?
On June 18, 2020,
And when did you perform the autopsy on Mr. Legieza?
same day, June 18, 2020,
Was that at your office, at the medical examiner's office?
in my office in Nashville, yes.
And just briefly explain to us why, if this accident occurred in Williamson County, why you would perform this procedure in Davidson County.
Again, we provide a service to the counties, and Williamson County is one of our counties. And to start with, the reason, because there are shortage of forensic pathologists, it's not available everywhere. So they have centralized offices in the region as the regional forensic center, and we are the largest one in the state of Tennessee.
Your finding of multiple blunt force injuries being the cause of death, is that based upon a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
Did you create an autopsy report as part of your official duties as chief medical examiner after you conducted an autopsy on Mr. Legieza?
Yes, as a part of the work, we will create an autopsy report as a result of the autopsy and the studies and in writing.
You might have a copy of that with you, but I'm going to pass you a 4-page document at this time. Could you please tell me if you can identify that 4-page document, Doctor?
Yes, this is a copy of my autopsy report.
In Mr. Legieza's case?
Yes.
Did you create that document?
Yes.
Did you have a duty to create that document as part of your employment at the medical examiner's office?
Yes, as part of my job, in the medical legal death investigation. Yes.
Is it the regular practice of your office to create reports such as those?
Yes,
Did you have personal knowledge of the information contained in that report when you created it?
yes,
Did you create the document at or near the time you concluded the autopsy and arrived at your conclusions as to the cause of death?
yes,
Your Honor, the state asked to move that document, 4-page document, into evidence as Exhibit 13.
Any objection?
No.
Let it be marked.
What number, sir?
13.
13.
Doctor, I'm going to project this on the screen behind you. Just I want you to answer a couple questions about it, please, sir. Looking at Exhibit 16, obviously the name of the decedent at the top, correct?
yes.
As to finding one blunt force injury, can you just, in a lay sense, if you can, walk us through your findings here?
Yes, I will go through a procedure or procedures of the autopsy. First of all, you have to examine, document the outside of the body to write down, record what you are finding in terms of disease, characteristic of changes, and trauma. And then you will examine the inside, including the brain, chest organs, and abdominal organs. So to start with, it is just logic to list and document all the findings from outside to inside. So the blunt force injuries, including multiple manifestations. To give an example, abrasions. Basically, abrasions are the scrapes of the skin, especially when the skin was, against the rough surfaces or struck by some objects. So get the abrasions. Contusions, on the other hand, is basically bruises on the skin. Lacerations are the one resulting in deep and the skin split, cause lacerations. And then from outside, you can see fractures, especially on the left lower extremity, basically meaning the left leg had multiple fractures. And then go inside, focal subgilial hemorrhage. Keep in mind, the head, there are several layers. The first layer is the skin. On the head is called the scalp. So, focal subgilial hemorrhage meaning there's, under the skin of the head, there's bleeding. And then, several layers later, skin, the bone, the dura, and what's called a very delicate membrane called arachnoid membrane. So under the arachnoid membrane, there's very delicate, thin membrane. Under that, there are blood, hemorrhage on the left frontal region. So front is more like on the forehead. Multiple rib fractures. Hemothoraces, bilateral meaning the blood accumulated in both chest cavities. And then hemoperitoneum, meaning the blood accumulated in the belly, abdominal cavity. Extensive lacerations basically mean the spleen is lacerated into pieces and a lot of blood accumulated in the belly. Multiple contusions, again, the bruises to the lungs and to the testicles. Multiple areas of soft tissue hemorrhage. Basically, the blunt force caused these areas of soft tissue hemorrhage. Pelvic fractures. The pelvic is comprised of the bones because of the blunt force injuries caused pelvic fractures. And also, as a result of the pelvic fracture, the bone stuff, punctured the bladder. So perforated the bladder. These are the major blunt force injuries.
Are those the blunt force injuries that you ruled when in conjunction with one another were the cause of death in this case?
Right. So these are combined and called multiple blunt force injuries.
Okay. Let's talk about other findings. Does this granulomas, does that relate to your finding as to cause of death?
These are incidental findings. These are just to say, you know, when I examine them, I document them. These are the granulomas, basically probably due to past inflammation and resulting in the body combated with this process and limited their spreading. So these are incidental findings and not related to the cause of death.
Post-mortem toxicologic studies. Does your lab or does your office send blood samples to an outside lab?
Yes, as a routine, we will submit a blood specimen for the toxicology studies, and we outsource our test to another professional lab in Pennsylvania.
Have you reviewed the results of that toxicology test in this case?
Yes.
Did Mr. Legieza have any drugs whatsoever in his system?
In the classes we tested for, the toxicology was negative.
For everything?
Everything we tested for, yes.
Finally, please, sir, if you wouldn't mind just reading your summary of the case into the record.
The whole thing?
Yes, please, sir.
Sure. So this 30-year-old white male police officer was transported to Vanderbilt University Medical Center after being involved in a motor vehicle accident on June 18, 2020. All life-saving measures were unsuccessful and death was pronounced shortly after arrival. An autopsy was performed on June 18, 2020. Second paragraph. Major autopsy findings include an adult white male with multiple abrasions, lacerations, contusions, and fractures on the left lower extremity upon external examination. Internal examination reveals focal subgilial hemorrhage, patchy subarachnoid hemorrhage, multiple rib fractures, bilateral hemothoraxis, and hemoperitoneum. Extensive lacerations of the spleen, contusions to the lungs and testicles, patchy pelvic fractures, perforation to the bladder, and multiple areas of soft tissue hemorrhage. Post-mortem toxicology studies are unremarkable. Based upon the circumstances surrounding death, as currently known, the cause of death is multiple blunt force injuries. The manner of death is accident.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Can you explain to us why, if you conducted the autopsy on June 18th, why you did not electronically sign this document until July 8th?
Right. So first of all, there is multiple procedures involved. First, you have to dictate and send for transcription and order toxicology. And the toxicology results will be back, depends on how they perform their tests. If there are multiple specimens on the system, it will take longer. Otherwise, it will take shorter. But there will be a process to finish, and then when I get everything together, then I finalize the report.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Thank you for your testimony. Those are all my questions.
Go ahead, Jim.
Good afternoon, Dr. Lee.
Good afternoon.
You and I know each other.
Yes.
We have been in other criminal cases where you have been the pathologist that testified, right?
Yes.
In this case, I want to make sure I heard you correctly when you said when you do an autopsy, it's like you have to examine the patient and find out the history and things like that. Is that true when you do every autopsy?
Yes. I
Who
mean,
did you-
ideally. A lot of times they don't have any information for us. So
You don't what?
sometimes, some other places, they don't have any other information. It depends.
Well, where did you get the information from in this case?
We have it called a death investigator in our office. So routinely, they will respond to the scene if there is a scene. Otherwise, they will interview whoever is involved. For example, police department, eyewitnesses, and other available source for information.
Well, who did he interview that you used to put this autopsy together?
So we have an investigator, her name is Stephanie Dender at the time, and she basically talked to whoever, and a lot of times I don't know exactly or whoever she talked to.
Well, you don't know in this case who she talked to, is that right?
Right.
So you're telling this jury that in this case, you have no idea about the background of this accident. Yes or no?
I would say I know some background because it was reported widely, not only just from our investigator alone, and it was reported widely through media.
Well, what's the background you know?
Background I know was the officer, I think is about to get off the work and go to the office. And
I can't hear you.
get off the work and try to go back to his office and was struck by another vehicle.
So you're telling the jury that what you know is that there was a car accident.
Yes.
Beyond that, do you know any details about what happened in the car accident to cause you to come up with this conclusion?
So depends on, you have to ask me I don't want to give general or broad knowledge about a lot of things. So I don't know what you mean by other things.
Well, you've got several degrees, right?
Yes.
You're a lawyer, you're a doctor, and I'm asking you a question. The question is, what information did you get from other sources that led you to this diagnosis?
Again, the investigating point that the officer, his car was struck by another car.
All right, let's move on. You talked about blunt force injuries, right?
Yes.
And do you have your autopsy in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I'm on that page where it says pathologic diagnosis. You went through in detail with the DA, A through K, as to what was the blunt force injuries, right?
Yes.
Am I correct in assuming that ordinarily a blunt force injury would not cause death?
So that's a general statement.
I'm sorry?
Your statement is generalized.
Is it true?
It's not true.
Okay.
A lot of people died as a result of blunt force injuries.
Okay. What you're saying in this case is, for example, A, multiple abrasions, contusions, and lacerations, that death was not a result of A alone.
It depends also. People died as a result of just by skin trauma. For example, if you had a lot of lacerations, injured the vessel, a lot of blood loss, it still can result in death.
I understand it still could be the cause of death. I'm asking you whether or not A, you've got listed as multiple abrasions, contusions, and lacerations, that whether or not A could have caused the death alone.
If by itself or by themselves, without anything else, I would say they are not sufficient to cause of death.
Is that true for B?
Not true, because a lot
Okay.
of people died as a result of multiple fractures.
How about C?
Same, it is, if by its alone, I would say it is not sufficient to cause death.
Look at E, multiple rib fractures.
Yes.
People don't normally die of a rib fracture, do they?
I would not say normally. There are cases, a patient died as a result of multiple rib fractures, yes.
So your answer to my question that people die from a multiple rib fracture is yes, they do.
Yes,
Was death in this case due to the multiple rib fracture?
again, this is not just the one thing. You cannot pick, say, here, here, here. So these are the total, what do you call it, injuries as a total combination of the injuries together. I don't want to get into which one is the result of, as a result to cause the officer's death, but they are combination. These are the combination to cause the death.
I understand that.
Yeah.
What did the rib fractures puncture, if anything?
So rib fractures can cause a lot of damages. First of all, the mere fact of the rib fracture can cause difficulty breathing, can cause pain. If it is severe enough, it can puncture the vital organs like lungs, sometimes even maybe heart. But if the vital organs are punctured, they can result in the blood loss and accumulation in the chest cavity, and air can get in, and the blood can accumulate, can result in death.
I probably didn't ask the question right, doctor. My question is, what did these rib fractures puncture? Do you know? Yes or no? Do you know what they punctured?
Cause, do you see H, right? The lungs are contused. Basically, the ribs fracture, and they cause the contusions or bruises to the lungs.
What did they puncture, sir?
So not necessarily puncture specifically, but the blood vessels are damaged, resulting in the blood loss.
How much blood was lost in this case?
So when I measure it, it measures approximately 100 cc of blood in each chest cavity, in the chest, and 600 cc of blood in the abdominal cavity.
Would I be correct in saying that 800 cc's of loss of blood is usually not enough to kill somebody?
So again,
Is that yes or no?
depends. I cannot say yes or no, because that's the time I measure the blood when I get it, but not necessarily the blood loss in the scene or in the hospital. So that way I cannot speak for the other, observation. But my documentation is 200 cc of blood in each chest cavity plus 600 cc of blood. But on the other hand, even 800 cc of blood alone is a very significant blood loss.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Just one question to kind of put a bow on this, doctor. Is it your medical conclusion that it was the totality of these blunt force injuries that you listed in your report that caused the death of Officer Legieza?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further cross?
Yes. Can you state, based on the totality of your injury opinion, that the bruises you saw were or were not caused by seatbelt?
That I will not be able to answer.
Thank you.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. May we excuse the witness?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You will please leave. Who will be your next witness?
Jeremy Hyatt.
Swear affirm testimony you give this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
6. Good afternoon, sir. Please state your name.
Jeremy Hyatt,
Spell it, please.
Jeremyhiett.
Where do you live, Mr. Hyatt?
I live in Franklin. You want the address?
No.
Okay.
How are you employed?
My wife and I own the Brentwood Market.
How long have you owned the Brentwood Market?
A little over 2.5 years.
Where is Brentwood Market located? The address?
The address is 925 Franklin Road.
Sir, do you recall the events of the morning of June 18th, 2020, when there was a crash in front of your store at the Brentwood Market?
Yes.
Can you tell us how you were first made aware of that?
I received a phone call from Shelley Smith, one of the ladies that opens the store, telling me that there was a bad crash in front of the store involving a Brentwood police officer.
What time did your store open that morning?
It opens at 6.
Some more water. Was Miss Smith opening the store by herself that morning, or was she with someone else?
She was with someone else.
Do you recall approximately what time Miss Smith called you that morning to tell you about the wreck?
It was a little after 5 a.m.
When Miss Smith called you, what did you decide to do?
Well, she FaceTimed me and told me, and she turned the camera around to show me the emergency vehicles there. I woke my wife up, and we called Officer Brian Kirkpatrick, who is a friend and also a police officer with Brentwood Police Department, and asked him what we needed to do. And his response was that there wasn't anything that we could do at that time, and that he would be in touch with us.
Did you eventually go into the store that morning?
Yes.
Approximately what time would you say you went?
Being that it was summer and we have 3 kids, we got into the store at like 8:30, 9 o'clock.
A.M.?
Correct.
Was it just you and your wife?
Yes.
Where did you park when you arrived? I can imagine the scene was chaotic, is that right?
It was. Officer Kirkpatrick told us to stop at the road and tell the officer that we were the owners and they would let us through. So there was a lot of debris from the wreck, and so we tried to park away from anything associated with the accident.
Were you able to see the 2 vehicles that were involved in the wreck?
Yes.
And can you describe the damage to them?
It was as bad as I've seen. It looked like a head-on collision to me.
And what was your reason for going in that morning? Why did you decide to go in around 8:30 or 9 if you were told essentially that there was nothing that you could really do?
Well, my Cindy Owens, which was the other lady that opened the store with Shelley Smith, we did not open the store because of the accident. So Cindy went home, and we had told Shelley to take care of anything that the first responders or police or anybody needed. And so then Shelley needed to leave, so we needed to come there to be at the store until the investigation was complete.
When you arrived, were you aware that you would be helping out law enforcement in any way that morning?
Just to whatever they needed. We were closed, obviously, to the public, so we were there to do what we needed to do.
Can you describe briefly to us the location of the Brentwood Market in relation to how far off of Franklin Road it is?
It's about 30 or 40 yards, not real far.
On the west side of the road or the east side of the road?
It's on the west side.
Is it a standalone building?
It is.
On June 18th, 2020, did you have security cameras installed inside of your store?
Yes.
Did you have security cameras installed outside of your store?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately how many in total you had installed?
6.
At some point on the morning of June 18th, 2020, did you access footage captured by those security cameras in an effort to locate any video related to the crash?
I did.
And how did that subject come up?
When we first got there, I was told by Brentwood Police Department that the investigation was being turned over to the THP, the Tennessee Highway Patrol, and that they may need to access my video cameras. The Brentwood police officer also showed me video to help me know what time to look for the vehicle coming through Franklin Road and Concord Road with their lights off at 4:50 a.m., I believe.
So you had seen this video allegedly from 4:50 a.m. at Concord and Franklin, and that's how you knew essentially what time frame to look at in your video surveillance system?
Correct.
Did you help law enforcement out to that effect?
I did.
By looking? Now, describe for us the system that you utilize to access the stored video footage. Is this something you have in your office that you're able to scroll and fast forward and rewind?
Correct.
And are you able to extract video from it if you find something that's relevant that you want to save?
Correct.
Your Honor, I'm an objective leading.
Just name, rephrase.
Yes, sir. Did you know specifically what you were looking for when you were accessing the footage?
Yes.
What?
Any footage of the crash.
Have you ever had any other crashes other than June 18th, 2020 in front of your store involving a Brentwood police officer?
No, sir.
Were you able to find or locate any videos that you believe to be relevant to the crash?
Yes,
Did you provide that footage to law enforcement?
I did.
Was there law enforcement officers present with you when you were looking for this video?
Yes,
Did you allow law enforcement to extract that data from your security system?
I did.
Did you provide it to them?
I did.
Your Honor, I want to play this video, but I want to make sure it's positioned in a way that the jury can see it, and I might need a couple minutes to do that because of the way the projector is tilted. If we could maybe just take a 5-minute break so I could do that.
It would be fine. If any of the jurors need to come down and move over so that you can see one or the other screen, always feel free to let me know that we can move some chairs up for you. Sometimes the folks that are over in the corner have difficulty seeing the screen.
And we may not have to excuse the jury. I might be able to try to do it right now without.
That'll be fine. But I'll go back to what I'm saying. The folks in the corner sometimes have difficulty seeing, so if you need to reposition yourself so that you can see the screen, let me know.
Okay, this shouldn't be difficult. Can we dim the lights, please? Okay, Mr. Hyatt, do you recognize the start of this video?
Yes.
The first thing I'm going to ask you is this timestamp at the top that says 6/17/2020. Is that accurate?
No, sir.
And the timestamp of 4:40:05, is that accurate?
No, sir.
Why is that inaccurate? Explain to us why that's not accurate.
When power goes out, something we've learned since being new business owners there is that when you have a video system like that, when power goes out, that the time starts over. And so if I don't manually go in and reset that time, when that's the case, then it will be incorrect.
Okay. And obviously, do you know what time 16:40 would be?
It would be 4:40 in the afternoon.
And if it were really 4:40 in the afternoon on June 17th, would it be dark outside?
No, sir.
All right, so I'm going to play this video from the start. Is this the video that you specifically extracted and provided to law enforcement in this case?
Yes.
Is this the only camera you had installed in front of your store that day?
There was another camera pointed south.
Did it capture anything relevant?
It did not.
Okay. I'm going to use the timestamp of the actual video file. At 1:11, who are these two individuals that just entered the frame?
The lady on the left is Shelley Smith. The lady on the right is Cindy Owens.
Are those employees of yours?
They are, or were.
Can you pass this to the witness, please? I'm going to pause it at 1:41. Mr. Hyatt, can you use that laser pointer and show us and the jury where we need to be looking in order to see the crash that you captured?
You'll see the vehicle come right here, and then you will see the back end of the vehicle sit right here.
Okay, thank you.
And now, for our record, remember that somebody's gonna be reading a transcript, so when you say here,
Okay.
they won't know what.
Okay.
So if you can describe with words what you're
Sure.
pointing to or relating.
So just past the telephone pole here in this lane, you will see the car enter here. And then there's a mailbox here, but I'm not sure if it can be seen. Can you see that from out there?
No.
There's a mailbox that's here, but the car will rest around the 17, in between the 17 and
When
16.
you say the car, is that Officer Legeiza's vehicle?
Correct.
Your Honor, I have a sidebar.
Thank you. Where my mouse is pointed at the top here underneath the timestamp, is that Franklin Road?
That's correct.
What we just witnessed, can you point to the car that came to rest?
Objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I have to provide context as to whether or not that's the same location of the vehicle he saw when he arrived at the store.
Lay the foundation, ask them when it's already arrived.
When you arrived at the store that morning, did you see a Brentwood patrol car in that location?
I did.
Thank you. Even though that timestamp reads June 17th, 2020, can you say with 100% confidence that the timestamp is incorrect and it depicts the events of June 18th, 2020?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Well, there's only been one crash involving a Brentwood police officer in front of our store. And also, the timestamp would indicate that it was 4:40 in the afternoon.
Thank Thank you, Your Honor. The state would ask to move into evidence the unedited video of the Brentwood Market as Exhibit 14, please.
Any objection?
No objection.
Let it be marked.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. Those are all my questions.
Your Honor, may I have a second?
Sir?
No, I think we're going to slow that over here.
No questions.
Thank you. May we excuse the witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Who will be your next witness?
Mark Szynski. Can Mr. Hyatt be released? Yes.
Swear affirm testimony given this matter will be the truth, and the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Good afternoon, sir. Please state your name.
Mark Szynski,
Spell it, please.
MarkCienski.
How are you employed, sir?
I'm a digital forensic technician for the Tennessee Highway Patrol.
What are your duties as a digital forensic technician with the Highway Patrol?
My main duty is to redact personally identifiable information from crash videos that the Highway Patrol give me, but I also do video enhancements for crashes that the CIRT team needs to have a clear view of what happened from different cameras that they have available to them.
What's the CIRT team?
They investigate the crashes.
What kind of past training and experience do you have related specifically to video editing capabilities?
Before I worked for the Tennessee Highway Patrol, which I've worked for 2 years, I was employed in television news for 30 years as a photographer and an editor doing nightly newscasts.
Did you edit videos during the entirety of your career in that field?
Yes, I did. I would edit multiple videos a day.
How many vehicles have you worked on in some form or fashion during the course of your employment, specifically at the Highway Patrol?
I've done 174 different cases. Each case has multiple videos, averaging about 3 videos per case.
Did you have the occasion through your employment at the Highway Patrol to work on editing a surveillance video from the Brentwood Market in Delhi in conjunction with an accident that occurred on June 18th, 2020?
Yes, I did.
To your knowledge, was that video part of an investigation by the Highway Patrol?
Yes.
I'm going to play you a video which has been marked as Exhibit 14. Do you recognize this video?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's the video from the market of the accident.
Did you perform video editing capabilities on this specific video?
Yes, I did.
What type of software or tools did you use when editing the video in that exhibit?
I use the Avid Media Composer.
What does the Avid Media Composer do generally?
It's a video editing software tool used by a majority of television stations in the United States and the world, and also by Hollywood and production houses across the country.
What specifically did you do to that video?
I took that video and made 7 other videos showing different highlighted points of what occurs.
And when you say different videos, what did you do specifically in those videos?
That video is quite long. It's a number of minutes long, so I removed the end of the video, the last few minutes, so we just saw the 2 cars approaching and the accident happened. And I would take, on some of them, I slowed it down so you could see what was happening. Others, I scaled up or zoomed in to what was going on in the video. And in some, I did both of those things.
Are you able to, based upon what you did, are you able to get a better view of the crash itself?
Yeah, so by scaling up or zooming in, I can remove most of the empty space, the parking area, and focus solely on the vehicles.
When you edited the video to create these separate videos, did you change the content of the video itself or just zoom and or alter speeds?
I did not change any content. I just zoomed in or altered the speed.
Do you have an objection to this? No? Okay. I'm going to show you 3 videos now of the 7, and I want you to tell me if you can identify them and tell me what they depict. Do you recall, lights down please. Do you recall making a video titled Officer View Medium Shot Speed 100%?
Yes, I do.
What does that video depict?
In that video, I zoomed in about 250%. So it's a medium shot of the location, and I left the speed at normal 100% speed.
Your Honor, can we have a sidebar real quick? Sorry.
Why are we static? Oh, thank you. We're still static. Do we know what happened? I mean, Judge, I'd like to play it on the projector screen. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. Remind us, officer view, medium shot, speed 100%?
Yes, that's a medium shot, so zoomed in about 250%. The speed is left the same, but it gives a medium view of the 2 cars colliding.
Officer view slow-mo 1.
In this video, I zoomed in 400% and focused on when the officer's vehicle first appears through the trees and then follows his vehicle across the top of the screen until the collision happens.
And finally, other driver view slow-mo 1.
This video is also zoomed in 400%. It's slowed down to 25% normal speed, and it remains static on the upper right-hand portion of the screen for when the one vehicle enters from the right and then the officer's vehicle enters from the left.
Aside from your work in editing these videos, did you perform any sort of other investigative work in this case or work this case in any other form or fashion?
I did not.
Your Honor, the state would ask to move into evidence as a collective exhibit the 3 edited videos as Exhibit 15.
Subject to the objection already been made, I'll admit these videos.
How are you admitting it?
I'm sorry?
How are, one exhibit with 3?
One exhibit with 3 videos.
Yes.
So exhibit 15.
And just to reiterate, did you alter the contents of the video in any form or fashion when you edited the video into those 3 separate videos?
I did not.
And are those accurate depictions of what you created?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Szynski. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Szynski, what is the digital format that you originally received the video from the Brentwood Market in?
I believe they were MP4s.
MP4s. Are those high quality videos?
They can be. In this case, they're not television HD standard, but they are a form of HD.
There, it's a form of HD. Is there a, I don't know the nomenclature, but a pixel per area for those, or some sort of so we can tell how many little pixels there are per?
I believe that those were 1920 by 1080 videos.
Okay.
So it's 1,920 pixels across the top and 1,080 going down the side.
What happens to 1,920 by 80 when you zoom in 250%?
The picture quality starts to degrade and becomes blurry.
And 400%, is it fair to say it degrades even more so?
Correct.
Those videos you produce look pretty good. Did you have to do anything to clean it up a little bit?
I did not.
You didn't have to add any bit of color or anything at all?
I did not.
Is it common that you don't have to add any sort of enhancement at all in something you enhance 400%?
If I was doing it for a television station, I would, but for this, I did not.
Okay. And what is the video format that those are in that were just introduced? Are those MP4s also?
They're specifically in H.264, which is an MP4 format.
It's an MP4. Are they also, so they wouldn't be 1920 by 80? That's kind of, it's a different calculation?
They're still in that format.
No further questions. Thank you.
Nothing further, Your Honor. No, sir.
Thank you, sir. May we excuse the witness?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brand?
Yes.
Excuse the witness?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You're free to leave. Who will be your next witness?
Bill Reap.
You swear affirm testimony given this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Good afternoon, sir. Please state your name.
Good afternoon. William Reap, R-E-A-P-E.
Is William spelled normal way?
Yes, sir.
How are you employed?
I work with the Brentwood Police Department as an evidence custodian.
What are your duties as evidence custodian with the Brentwood Police Department?
I make sure the items submitted by police officers are marked appropriately and maintain the chain of custody so they can be presented in court at a future time.
Are you familiar with the vehicle collision that occurred on the morning of June 18th, 2020 on Franklin Road that took the life of Officer Destin Legieza?
Yes, I am.
That morning, did you play a role in attempting to locate evidence relating to that incident?
I did.
I want to ask you questions about that now, please. How were you made aware of the crash involving Officer Legieza on June 18th?
The chief of police called me early in the morning. He said there'd been a crash involving a Brentwood officer and he needed me to come in
Did you know why you were going in?
to collect video evidence.
When you arrived, were you made aware of any of the details pertaining to the collision that had occurred?
Yes.
How?
Our desktop computers, you can log in and see any active calls, so you can find out vehicles that are involved, location and time.
Were you aware of the vehicle details of the cars that were involved?
Yes, sir.
What specifically were you made aware of?
I knew there was a Brentwood patrol car, an SUV, and a Jeep.
Do you know where it occurred?
Yes, sir, from the Brentwood Market in Delhi.
Were you made aware of any other video evidence that had already been discovered in the case when you arrived?
No, sir.
Were you aware that there was an ongoing investigation occurring at the crash scene?
Yes.
Did you personally ever go to the crash scene?
No, sir.
Were you able to monitor in real time the specifics of the investigation at the crash scene?
Yes.
How so?
By police radio and by a computer program where you can see the units that are out there and kind of it updates the screen.
Are you able to access that at your workstation in the evidence custodian office?
Yes, sir.
Did you do that?
Yes.
What did you decide to do to help in this investigation?
I decided to look at the traffic cameras to see if there was any footage related to the scene, if I could see any vehicles or anything abnormal.
Did you decide to do this on your own, or were you directed to do this by your supervisors?
I did it on my own.
How long have you been with the police department?
16 years.
How long in the specific role as evidence custodian?
Approximately 15 years.
Approximately how many traffic cameras are installed at various intersections across the city of Brentwood?
There's 28, 29 cameras.
Do you know why these cameras were initially installed?
Yes, sir. They were placed by our traffic operations to monitor the flow of traffic towards the interstate. So if there was a backup, they could extend the lights, the cycles, or shorten them to get traffic moving.
How long have they been installed?
To my knowledge, 2.5 years.
Over the course of their usage over the past several years, have they provided any additional use for the Brentwood Police Department in addition to monitoring traffic?
Yes, sir.
In what sense?
If there was a burglary overnight or a hit-and-run vehicle accident, we'd be able to refer back to those cameras to see if we can uncover any relevant details.
As the evidence custodian at the police department, do you have the clearance and capability to access footage captured by these traffic cameras?
Yes, I do.
Can you access a live feed of the traffic cameras?
Yes.
Can you access stored videos in the traffic cameras?
Yes.
How long are the videos stored?
72 hours.
Are you able to download and save files of traffic camera videos if you locate ones that you want to save?
Yes.
During the course of your employment, have you utilized this system to view and extract traffic camera footage across the city of Brentwood?
Yes.
How many times would you say?
In excess of 50.
In your experience, does the system accurately capture footage from the traffic cameras across the city?
Yes.
In your experience, are you able to extract video files captured by those cameras on a consistent basis?
Yes.
Do the video files that you're able to extract and save accurately reflect the footage that you're able to view on the system before you extract them?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe, based upon your knowledge and usage of the system, that it's faulty in any way or produces inaccurate recordings?
No.
Explain to us how you go about extracting video files from the traffic camera system if you want to save them for future viewing.
All right, I have a spreadsheet that I could look at the individual cameras that are at the various intersections in Brentwood. So I would select the intersection that I wanted to view by a hyperlink, which then would take me to the actual camera. So then I'd need to log in using my credentials, and I could see clips of video that camera actually captured. So if the date and the time were relevant to what I was looking for, I could view that clip and I could export it or save it to my computer.
When you do that, export and save a file to your computer, is a timestamp generated in any form?
A timestamp is generated on the file name itself. It's not on the screen for you to see. It's the file name.
Explain to us what you mean when you say it's not on the video itself, but it's on the file name.
Some of the videos that you see would have the date, the time, maybe a car unit number, data that's put onto the screen for you to view. This system, when you export it, that doesn't exist. It's not there.
So for instance, we've seen videos in this case from dash cam footage from Brentwood police officers where it has a date and timestamp.
That's correct.
Is that the case for the traffic cameras?
Traffic cameras do not do that.
Where is the timestamp specifically generated in the traffic camera files?
When I export the file, it is put into the file name itself. So you'll see a date, a time on the file name.
Were you able to find any videos on June 18th, 2020 that contained footage you believe to be relevant to this case?
Yes, I did.
At how many separate intersections did you find relevant videos?
2 separate intersections.
What were the intersections?
Franklin and Concord Road and Franklin and Moores Lane.
I'm going to ask you first about the footage that you located at Franklin and Concord Roads. How many video clips of the intersection of Franklin Road and Concord Road did you find that you believe specifically related to the crash involving Officer Legieza?
Just 1.
Did you extract a file depicting that video footage that you found at that intersection?
Yes.
Did it generate a file name that sets forth the timestamp of the date and time that the video captures?
Yes, I did.
Is that date and time explicitly written in the file name itself?
Yes.